Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Northern Virginia Technology Council and the Consumer Technology Association for our virtual Masters of Leadership Series event. Please welcome Rich Montoni, the Chairman of Nvtc and the Vice Chairman of Maximus.
Well, good afternoon. I am delighted to welcome you to our virtual event today. We have an exciting program with Advanced Micro Devices President and Chief Executive Officer, Lisa Su, and Consumer Technology Association President and Chief Executive Officer, Gary Shapiro. First, before we get started, a couple housekeeping rules. Everybody has been muted, and during the question and answer portion of our event today, if you would like to ask a question, it's pretty simple. Just use your Q&A button to write your question for the speakers. That Q&A button is located in the middle of the bottom bar on your screen. This series is made possible by our co-producer, Consumer Technology Association, our premier sponsors, CoreSite and SAP, and our support sponsors who include American Systems, Amazon Web Services, CGI Federal, CNSI, Cresa, Iridium, Micron Technology, Morgan Stanley, Raymond James and Associates, Transformation Systems Inc., and Bright Group Inc., also known as BGI. Thank you all for your support. If you would like to join them as a sponsor, please connect with Yolanda Lee at Nvtc today. The next three events in this series will be as follows. On June 11th, we will have the Heritage Foundation President, Kay Cole James. Next, on June 23rd, we will have Florida Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy at 2 p.m. And finally, on June 30th at 11 a.m., we will have the U.S. House Majority Whip, James Clyburn. Registration is open for all three of these next events on the Nvtc website. Now, it is my honor to introduce today's moderator, Gary Shapiro. Gary is a Nvtc board member, and he is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Consumer Technology Association. CTA is the U.S. trade association, which represents more than 2,200 consumer technology companies and which owns and produces CES, the global stage for innovation. It is through his New York Times best-selling books, television appearances, and as a columnist whose more than 1,000 opinion pieces have appeared in publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, that Gary has direct policymakers and business leaders on the importance of innovation in the U.S. economy. He is considered an influencer on LinkedIn and has more than 300,000 followers. Please welcome Gary Shapiro.
Thank you, Richard, and thanks to the NVTC for partnering us. It's a great organization that represents the tech industry so well in the Northern Virginia area. The largest tech association, the regional association of which I'm aware, and it's an honor to sit on the board and be a partner with them. But I'm really thrilled to have Dr. Lisa Su with us today. As Richard says, she's been the president and CEO of AMD since 2014. But that doesn't tell the real story. I mean, the story is she has changed things radically there and hit such grand slam home runs that the growth in the company stock is quadruple digit. I had to really check that out, but the stock growth is phenomenal. We were also very fortunate she was a keynote speaker at CES in 2019. And to just give you a little bit of flavor of what's happened since she was the keynote speaker, at 2019, what a year. The Bloomberg 50 list, the NYSCI Distinguished Leadership Award, the top 100 best performing CEOs in the world according to Harvard Business Review, CNN Risk Takers, the world's best CEOs of 2019, Barron's, the most powerful woman in business according to Fortune, Business Person of the Year, Fortune Magazine. Those are just a few of the many, many awards that Dr. Su has gotten, but she's had quite a life even before she got to AMD. She held senior positions at Freescale Semiconductor, IBM, and Texas Instruments, and she received bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees in electrical engineering from MIT. She's published more than 40 technical articles and was named a fellow of the IEEE in 2009. What a amazing career she's had. She serves on a number of boards, including she's elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science. She serves on the board of directors of Cisco and chairs the U.S. Semiconductor Industry Association, as well as active on the board, including having chaired the Global Semiconductor Alliance. So welcome, Lisa. So good to see you.
Gary, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We're absolutely thrilled. It's such a important organization, and it's a very critical time. Could you just start out by telling us a little bit about how you started personally, where you grew up, what you did, what before the successful corporate years,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
move on through those.
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. So, look, I was born in Taiwan, and my family immigrated to New York when I was 2. So I would say I'm a New Yorker at heart, and always a little bit involved in math and science, and very interested in engineering. And so that was most of my schooling. And look, I've been an engineer for 25 years. I'm lucky right now that I'm running a important company in technology for us. But at the end of the day, I love building things and really pushing the envelope on technology. So that's been my focus.
And so could you talk about your various positions you held at other companies and how you ended up at AMD and what you started as?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I'm a New Yorker at heart, and so after spending 8 years in Boston at MIT, I ended up spending a large portion of my earlier career at IBM. So in the Yorktown and the Fishkill areas, up in the Hudson Valley, and it was a great experience. I mean, again, in semiconductors and microelectronics and in building microprocessors, and at some point. The opportunity came to go to Freescale Semiconductor. So I moved to Austin, and I live in Austin right now. And then 8 years ago, I joined AMD. And the thought process was, there are so few companies in the U.S. that are really doing high performance microprocessor design. And for those of you who are less familiar, just think about just billions of devices on a small microchip, the size of a dime or a quarter, that can really just power some of our most important applications. So I started in that area, and I've always wanted to be a semiconductor CEO. So in some case, AMD is sort of my dream job, and it's really been a fun experience for me.
You say you always wanted to be a semiconductor CEO. You don't really mean always. I mean, at what point did that realization occur?
Well, I guess you could say my freshman year in college, I did my first stint as an undergraduate researcher in one of the semiconductor labs at MIT. And so, I was doing basically grunt work as any undergraduate would do, but I was actually making small devices, and it was just amazing to me that you could actually do that. And so since then, semiconductors has been my passion. And as an engineer, you always think, boy, could I make a better business decision, or is there a technology that can really change the change the world and change the dynamics, and that's what's really been my interest in semiconductors is, how can we use the technology to do a lot of good in the world.
Well, that's great. Usually engineers go in a technical direction and they stay as engineers. How did you get the people skills and the business management skills to rise up?
It's interesting. So at IBM, when I was relatively, let's call it new in the company, I was 2 or 3 years in the company. I was dealing with senior fellows like Robert Denard, who did who was largely considered the father of scaling. And I would stop by his office, and I thought to myself, I can never be as smart as him. So that just could never happen. And so I would have to build my career on the sort of the technical management front. And I had a lot of opportunities to do that. I think one of the things that is so interesting about engineering leadership is the power of bringing people together. What you can do as a single person is great, but what you can do when you can bring 10 smart people together, or 100 smart people together, or 10,000 smart people together, aligned on a vision, it's just incredible. And so that's really how I got into to management and got into really building teams that can do really seemingly impossible tasks around technology. But once you put the effort and the thought process into it, you can really do something special.
But how did you get the accounting skills? All the skills are management, the people skills, all the parts of the organization that aren't technical, marketing, sales. Where did you learn that just along the way in your other jobs? Did you have different mentors? What was it? Because this is a discussion and a focus on leadership. How do you get to be a leader, I guess, is what I'm asking, if you start in one specific area and leading across an organization.
Yeah, Gary, I didn't get an MBA or anything, like that. I think, the advice that I was given, which I actually give to people now, which is actually very good advice, is to try many different things. And so, one of the opportunities that I received early in my career is about every 2 or 3 years, after finishing a project, I would get a chance to try something new. And so, I was doing deep engineering work, but, I had an opportunity, for example, to really spend a lot of time with customers on a large customer opportunity. That's how I learned about customers. And then, I ran my first business. And by the way, I didn't do such a great job running my first business, but I made a lot of mistakes. And I learned from that, and then you get a chance to run, larger organizations. And so the opportunity with great mentors is to have the opportunity to try different things and to learn on the job, and to learn things like accounting and the balance sheet. But fundamentally, I would say there's a lot of on-the-job training, and being able to have the opportunity to learn, make mistakes, correct, and do better the next time.
Do you learn from your mistakes or your successes?
I absolutely learn from my mistakes. I absolutely remember my mistakes. It's much harder to remember successes, because as fun as they are in the moment, they kind of go. But boy, I mean, I remember very, very well, the first, really large business mistake I made, or the first, you just do. And those things stay with you, actually. And that's sort of what I tell people is I have this philosophy that you really learn by sort of examining what could you have done better the next time.
I couldn't agree with you more. But since you raised it a number of times, do you want to share with us one of those big mistakes?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, so the very first business I ran, this was many years ago, and it was a middle-sized business, a couple $100 million. And within the first 3 months, I had missed my plan by 50%, like 50%, within 3 months. I was an engineer turned business person, and I had to learn that, there's all kinds of judgment and skills in how you put together plans and execute towards plans. So I remember that very, very well, I must say.
What is it that you had done wrong, though, in terms of missing your plan? Was it the plan wasn't right, or is it you did something wrong?
I was inexperienced. And so what I had done was I had taken a lot of input without inserting, judgment, really understanding sort of the risks involved, doing risk management, and, really trying to figure out what is the outcome of not every single thing had to go perfectly, but there was a way to assess, what a more probable answer was. So it was just complete inexperience, but, something that, frankly, I think for all of us, it's when you're running a large company, it's not much different, right? You have to take a lot of input and make some decisions about, where you want to take risks and where do you want to make sure that, you have very strong, execution plans.
So today in your position, when you see someone making a mistake in your company, do you try to help them avoid it, or do you just empower people and try to caution them, but let them make the mistakes and learn from them?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, our philosophy is on, how do we put together, business processes and, sort of milestones so that, we can catch things before they happen. And my goal is always to, yes, we want to make sure that people learn along the way, but we also want to make sure that we protect the business. And so it's a little bit of both. And what you learn is they're actually people are really hungry and want to do the best that they can. And so this is actually, we have this statement within AMD that I use, and it's called the next 5%. And what I say is, hey, there's always like the next 5% that we could do a little bit better. And this is not about was it a good result or a bad result, but you could always do a little bit better. And when we think about it in that particular way, I think people get really motivated about just doing things a little bit better, serving our customers a little bit better, ensuring that that product is just a little bit faster, and how do we put the processes in place to enable that to happen. So yes, there's a lot of that in sort of the leadership philosophy.
So now you're heading AMD. So what was your secret sauce, your success the last 6 years that has gotten you so quickly, so fast, and so amazing? What is it you did right?
Well, I would say there are some fundamentals. First of all, AMD has a storied history, right? We actually just turned 51 as a company a few weeks ago. And so we've been around for a long time. And if you look at the foundation of the company, it was ingrained around technology and entrepreneurialism and really innovation. I think what over the last 5 or 6 years, what we've brought, and this includes my leadership team, is that spirit of, we are an innovation leader. We have to take the right risks. So this is about making big bets, but it's also about knowing what you're really good at. And what we're really good at is high performance computing. We're really good at putting an incredible amount of computing horsepower in in people's hands, and so it takes time. It actually takes many years to build that foundation, but we took the time to build that foundation, and that's core in our beliefs, right? The number one thing I tell people every day is we're here to build great products, and that really emanates in the decisions that we make.
And in terms of the areas that you've seen growth in, I was looking up some of the company, and you talk about things, frankly, I don't understand in terms of your company. I'm not an engineer, and I don't even try to fake it that I am. But there, in categories of products, I understand, and seems to be you've been very successful with the cloud and video games, and you've called 2020 the year of the notebook. And I'm curious as to whether, especially given changes this year, how you've seen that, if you still have that view. These are three, and I know that there's probably other areas, data centers, for example, that are in graphics that you're very big on as well. Which are the areas you see as strong today, and which are the areas you see strong in the future?
Yeah, so if I talk about sort of the market size and the market opportunity, computing is really important in large in a few markets, right? So in PCs, for example, PCs is a $30 billion plus market. Data centers, it's another 30 billion plus and growing. And then you look at gaming and game consoles and all that content, another $10-12 billion market. Really large opportunities that are out there, and they all require more computing horsepower. I'm very excited about where high performance computing is going in the future. If you start, if you just take a look at where we are today, and sort of the events around COVID-19. I mean, it's been a very difficult time across the world. But when you look at what has helped us is the power of computing. The fact that we're doing this video cast today, it's collaboration tools that require computing horsepower in the cloud. It's people needing PCs at home so that they can effectively work from home. It's kids needing PCs for schooling, and so you have schooling at home. So I think this is just an example of why computing is so important. It's a place that we've always believed. We've always believed the foundation of high performance computing could do amazing things, both in terms of solving difficult problems as well as making our everyday lives different. And then we're seeing some of that. So it's a very exciting time to be in the computing market.
Well, there have been, this year 2020 is not the way we anticipated it when we met in early January in Las Vegas at CES. We've had two big things, and we started out with a roaring economy, and then we were hit with COVID-19, and then this, even since we spoke last week, it seems that things have dramatically changed in our country in the area of race relations. And I'd like you to talk about both of those. Let's start with the big one of the moment, if you don't mind. What is your view of what's happened in the last week in terms of where we are as a nation and where we can go?
Yeah, it's really, if you think about the events over the last week, I think it's fair for all of us. They're shocking. They're extraordinarily disturbing. I think it's sort of a combination of feelings, no matter who you are, between anger and frustration and just sadness as to where we are. My view on these things is, obviously, this has to be addressed. I think the social inequality has to be addressed. I think the racial divide has to be addressed. I think, if you talk to most people, everybody feels that way. The key for us as a nation is to figure out how to affect change. And it's an opportunity for us, I think, to affect change. I mean, I think the way, I view it personally is, first there is, what we each have to do within our sphere of influence, and ensuring that, we help our employees and friends and families and communities sort of process and make sense of where we are, and then it really is an opportunity for us to think about what will enable us to have systemic reform in this area. And so it's I mean, I think, Gary, you said it, it's the world is has changed quite a bit, and it's our opportunity as leaders to address it. But it's a big big issue for us to address.
I agree. It is a big issue, and it seems that we're united as a country on three basic principles. One is that that murder of Floyd was horrible, tragic, wrong, everything, as are similar instances. And the second, I think we're united on is that there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's an American cherished right to express your anger, to demonstrate, to do everything. But the third thing is a principle that I think everyone also agrees upon, that when it comes down to violence and mayhem and looting, it's just horrifying to see. So you put all those three together, and the fourth one, which is the role, in my view, the role of the police, is it's a very important one, and the vast majority of them are good people and putting their lives at risk. And you have all those four principles together, which I think most people would agree on all four of those. Most Americans, I should say. I don't know about other countries, but we have an issue, and it does boil down to the fact that it's tough to be Black in America because of our system, and there's no denying that. I mean, it's just tragic, and I don't think there's answers, but I think we could agree on the problem, and that's where I think we are. And it's good to see people like yourself and other corporate leaders stand up and say this is important. It's important because we're Americans. It's important because we have employees, we have customers, and we have a country that we believe in. Your parents came here to give you a better life, I assume. My wife's an immigrant, and I've talked to her parents about it, and we want to. This is the land of the free, right? And that should be free for everybody. I didn't need to make a speech. That was supposed to be a question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, look, Gary, I think you said it very, very well. And I think we all feel it, and we all feel a responsibility to do our part and make something good come out of what was such a horrific situation. Well,
we could be hopeful, and we could try to make something good come out of it. But on COVID-19, which there's the enemy that we could all agree upon if you want to find an enemy. AMD is, and you have stepped up early on. You've done a lot of things. You've even gotten together with competitors, and you want to talk about some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, I don't think any of us could have predicted or imagined, the impact of COVID-19 across the world. I think we We have a global company, and so we had, we saw sort of the beginnings of this in China early in the first quarter, and we worked through that. Our first and foremost priority has always been the health and safety of our employees and making sure that we provide the right environment for that. And then, a very close second was providing the needed products and capabilities for our customers as they were going through it. And then, our help and association with the community. So all three have been top of mind. I mean, I can tell you, I think, every single day since, since early in the first quarter, we've been thinking about it. But I do believe that there are some really good things that we've been able to do. I think, I feel good about where our employee community is. We're mostly work from home. We are starting the process of returning to the office, but we're mostly work from home today. The team has done great, and I'm really proud of them for everything that we've been able to accomplish. I think for our customers, it is about providing the needed capacity. So when you think about cloud data centers and the back office of that, like we're running, on this Zoom meeting, or if you're running on Microsoft Teams, you may be running on AMD EPYC server processors, and that's been one of the areas where we've really tried to build up capacity in the cloud over the last couple of months. We have seen a large interest in notebook PCs. The idea that you used to have maybe one PC per household, that's sort of just changed, and people realize that this is now one of the fundamentals of communication and productivity. And so that's been a positive in terms of working with our customers. And then on the community front, I'm actually really excited about what computing can do to help accelerate solutions to some of these problems. So COVID-19, some of the vaccine research, a lot of the transmission science, the work that's being done requires high performance computing. And so we've been participating with the White House High Performance Computing Task Force. We've also actually just this week donated some supercomputing clusters to MIT, NYU, and Rice University. So very, very exciting, opportunity to try to, again, use what is a very difficult situation, but make sure that we're better, as we come out of it. And that's certainly been our focus.
Well, you certainly talked about how the industry has stepped up and your company stepped up and the value the technology has played in this. How about for you as a leader and your leadership team, how has it affected your relations, your companies, your customers, your ability to communicate? Do you think it's better, or do you think some things have gotten better, or is it more difficult because of the lack of human contact?
Yeah, Gary, I would say, I think nobody would say that it's a wonderful situation. I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, it's hard for, so many people to be sheltered at home. But that being the case, we're making the best of it. And I think we're making the best of it in a good way. I do think that our employees are, extremely productive, and we're doing everything that we can to help them with all aspects of, dealing with COVID-19 beyond just the work aspects, but the mental health aspects, just the stress aspects and all that stuff that need to be addressed. I do think it brings people closer together. I mean, it brings customers closer together. I mean, we have sort of a common goal, which is to help each other, through a difficult situation. I think it brings a community closer together. I mean, I can't tell you how many calls that I've been on from various associations, whether it's our semiconductor, sort of group of CEOs that, we hang out. We used to talk once a quarter. Now we talk every 2 weeks on a Zoom call. We have, in Silicon Valley, we're involved in the Silicon Valley Recovery Council, where we're working with, the mayor and, a group of industry and public-private sector leaders to talk about how do we reopen the Silicon Valley economy. So I do think it's brought out the best in everybody, because we all are aligned along this common goal. As you said, whether you're a partner, a competitor, a acquaintance, or just someone in the community, this is our opportunity to help each other. And I think we've all taken it very seriously and to heart.
And do you think some of the changes because of COVID will be lasting? Do you anticipate, for example, that your employees will be working more remotely? It'll change the demographics in terms of where people live. Do you see changes that are permanent as a result of this experience we've had for almost 3 months now?
Gary, I do think there will be some changes. I think we all talk about what the new normal might be. I think some of the changes are perhaps, more clear than others. Like, for example, we're all not going to travel as much. I mean, that's factual, right? We've now learned that we can do a lot through all of these, virtual collaboration tools. It's not quite the same, but it's pretty good. I do think that there will be some employees that will want more flexibility to work remotely, and I think that will be okay. I do think that there is a point where we enjoy being together. I think human beings enjoy being together. Like, I enjoy coming to the office, if not just for, seeing people in the halls and being able to interact. And so I do think, once we get through this period and, there's better testing and, we make progress on the therapeutics and the vaccine, that we will, swing back to, let's call it more of the where it used to be. But there will be some things that are different. And, I think we've all learned a bit about ourselves and a bit about what our businesses can withstand through this, experience.
Do you think younger people are more likely to start traveling more quickly?
Well, I think, let's see, that's a good question. I think what we see is that I think younger people are more apt to want to get back to interacting. So, I mean, we see that as we surveyed our employees, we actually surveyed our top sites very recently. And what we saw is that the younger employees, for a number of reasons, are more anxious to come back into the office, for example. And, I think that's partly due to, sort of mindset. That's also partly due to probably some personal situations where, it may be difficult to work from home. But yes, I do think there is a divide in sort of how people think about this. And, our philosophy has been, look, let's leave it to the employees to decide what makes them comfortable. And, our job is to make sure that we create an environment that's very safe and also very flexible. And that's what we're trying to do.
Do you think the COVID and the experience of the last week have put a greater premium on empathy and understanding and communication skills that just didn't exist 6 months ago?
That's a good question. I would say that it's made all of us realize that there's a lot more than just, the straight, products and P&L and the business. I think that's absolutely true, Gary. The amount of time that we spend on, things that you wouldn't imagine, how many people should be in the elevator, to make sure that it's safe. For example, that's important, right? I mean, yes, we want to make sure that we've thought about every detail. As for the events of last week, what do we do? I mean, I'm really big on making sure that, we're not just talking about a topic, but we're actually doing something about a topic. And so, my conversation with some of my team is, what do we do so that we're adding to it and not just, talking about something. And so, and that's, I think we all, feel that responsibility.
I think that's a very tech industry approach, actually. Very, we could solve this problem technically. And it's one of the reasons, actually, California has a lot of interesting laws, is because they think every problem could be solved by government. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. They have some good laws and some that are not so good. But that is definitely how we think in our industry, that let's take a problem and let's just solve it. And I think that's almost an American cultural thing as well, that, we'll think outside the box and we'll solve some. So let's be hopeful. I want to switch subjects a little bit. It's in a diversity category. Your company's been recognized by Bloomberg and the Human Rights Campaign and others. You're a good company, obviously. But you yourself, you set a record last year in that you're the first woman to top Associated Press CEO's pay analysis. So you're at the top.
You are not supposed to talk about that, Gary.
Oh, I asked you if I could talk about everything, and I thought you said I could. Well, I'm going to ask you.
Just kidding.
Well, we want to know what's the key to your success in it. And actually, if you're giving advice to women, or even men for that matter, who aspire to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, what advice would you give them? And being a woman, are you willing to talk about any of that? Or have you had any unique challenges? Or, congratulations, by the way. Just it's good to break through those barriers, and I think it's strong. And we've also seen more women running Fortune 500 companies. That's an all-time high right now, and that's we're in the right trend that way. I wonder if you had any views on any of those comments.
Yeah. So look, Gary. The way I think about it is, one of the reasons I enjoy sort of technology as much as I do is because I do believe it's pretty black and white. And the black and white is, either, you perform and, perform in terms of, deliver the right technology or the right business results or the right, return to shareholders, whatever your metric is, or it'll be clear that you haven't been successful. And I think that's the way we want to think about the world is one where people are given opportunities to demonstrate, whether they are successful or unsuccessful. Our goal from a company standpoint, my personal philosophy on this is all about opportunities. There are a lot of really smart people in this world, and the fact is you need to not just be smart, but you also need to be in the right place at the right time with the right circumstances. And you can improve your odds by, being in the right field, where you go to school, what you major in, what your first jobs are, but you also need a little bit of help in that. And, our job as, senior leadership, as management, as executives is to give good people good opportunities. So I would say that I can say that for myself. I was very, very lucky. I had mentors who gave me good opportunities, and I was able to capitalize on those opportunities. But when you look at the diversity aspect of it, again, clearly we haven't done enough. As much progress as there has been, there's still not enough women. There are not enough underrepresented minorities in leadership positions. And I really believe that that's because, the opportunities have not necessarily been presented in such a way. And so that is I think more work for us to do. But again, it's an area where people are very cognizant of it. It's a conversation that's very, sort of in the moment around diversity and, sort of equality and all of those things.
I agree with that. You're also a competitor in a pretty interesting field where almost half the world production is from US companies like yours. But one of your competitors is NVIDIA. And I have to ask about this because there's conflicting stories on the web. First of all, tell us about the partnership you have. But also, Jensen was also born in Taiwan. There's stories on the web that he's a relative to your grandfather's cousin. Is he a relative? And what's the deal there? Sorry to ask it. I have to.
Let me answer the first question first, and I'll come back to the second one if I remember. How's that, Gary? Look, I think NVIDIA is a great company. There's no question from the technology capability that they have demonstrated, over the last decade has led the industry to some of the key areas in AI and so on and so forth. I am actually proud of the fact that in their most recent, AI system, they have chosen AMD. And I've been asked, well, why do you think they chose AMD? And I think they chose AMD because we have the best product in the marketplace today. And so I feel really good about that. And it is a competitive world, so there's no question that we compete hard, but it's also a world where you also have to partner with your competitors from time to time. So our CPUs work with NVIDIA GPUs in PCs, in data centers, and in a whole host of applications. That doesn't mean we're not going to compete hard in gaming. So we'll continue to do that. And since you're a friend, Gary, and since you asked me, and I try to answer questions, we are distant relatives.
Okay.
Distant relatives. So some complex, second cousin, type of thing.
Got it. Thank you. So one of the subjects of what it takes to go forward with the economy, the Wall Street Journal reported this week that the Semiconductor Industry Association is seeking $37 billion for subsidies to construct United States chip factories. On the website, you're listed as the chairman of the SIA. Could you tell us anything about this proposal?
Yes, no, I'm actually not the chairman of the SIA. So that's actually Keith Jackson from On Semiconductors, the chairman. I am a member of
I apologize.
Of the SIA board, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So the SIA represents about 95% of the semiconductor industry. We have spent time on this topic of U.S. domestic manufacturing. I actually think it's a broader conversation, Gary, and the broader conversation is really around U.S. leadership in technology. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, the U.S. is a leader in technology, in high performance computing, and our goal is to continue, that particular leadership. With that comes a need for some secure supply chains, and so that's part of the conversation is around, how do we make sure we have secure supply chains in manufacturing, and another part of that is to ensure that we continue with real leading edge R&D and ensure that we are able to do that across the industry. So I think that's important to the semiconductor industry. We want to maintain our leadership. One of the things that I'm most proud of as CEO of AMD is that we've been selected to be the computing horsepower behind the two largest exascale supercomputers that the Department of Energy has awarded. So, if you think about the Department of Energy and what we do with our national labs at Oak Ridge National Labs and Lawrence Livermore National Labs, they need the best computing on the planet, and we're proud to be the supplier of that, and we want to continue to do that. So, this is about U.S. leadership in semiconductors for the next 10 years, and how do we ensure that it's funded correctly, that it's funded both internally, when I say internal, both within the semiconductor industry, as well as in these very important public-private partnerships across sort of the U.S. government and the industry.
Well, it seems that both presidents or candidates at this point seem to be in favor of encouraging U.S. manufacturing. So you probably will have somewhat of a sympathetic ear for that, or the SIA will, in terms of Congress.
Yeah, well, again, I think it's one amongst many of the items that we think are important to continue U.S. leadership in this area. Any
others you want to share?
Well, as I mentioned, I think the R&D aspect is very important. I think in addition to that is the training of sort of new researchers. If you think about what's gotten us where we are, we have these great universities that have really are the training ground for the next generation of technology leaders, and so all of that is important as we think about sort of future leadership.
Should we be doing something differently at the pre-university system with schools? If some of the parents listening say, I want my kid to go in the semiconductor industry, what should they be doing in high school, for example?
Well, I think the foundation, so there's a couple of things. One is we need people to want to go into the semiconductor industry, right? So for, a long time, the sexy parts were like, software and, internet and that kind of stuff. We're trying to say, hey, semiconductors are pretty sexy when you think about what we can do with them. But yes, when you think about, high school education or sort of junior high education, it's really a propensity towards math and science. It's really about problem solving, not being afraid, to solve problems is what I would like to say. Sometimes they call it, sort of the hard sciences versus, some of the softer skills. I think you need both, right? You need, I like to believe that my training as an engineer, I like to say, is really about how to solve problems, and how can you very analytically solve a problem, and I think we should make that fun, and that is one of the the key parts of making STEM interesting, especially to women and underrepresented minorities.
Hmm. Well, I see we have questions from the audience. One of them is, given everyone works remotely, how do you see growth for employees? How do you keep tabs, per se, without that face-to-face interaction? What would show you leadership potential in today's work from home environment?
Yeah, great question. We really believe that this is about managers and leaders providing direction, motivation, inspiration to their employees through unconventional means, right? So it's really about thinking outside of the box in terms of how you solve a problem. Yes, normally you get into a room and you whiteboard. Now you can't whiteboard, so you get on a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams call, and you have to collaborate together in that way. I do believe that it is about personal initiative, and so I've seen some really really great examples of that. There are lots of people who are doing unconventional things. These online happy hours, or I heard a story yesterday about someone doing a cooking class with their with their employees, so that they had a chance to interact that way. We're all about getting the best out of our products, and so even in this time, we've been very creative on what we're able to do in our labs with very few people, because we have all these remote abilities to monitor progress. I think from a management standpoint, at the end of the day, it is about results, and so we're going to measure people on the results. But you might have to get those results a slightly different way than you did before.
Okay, I see a question from the most productive reporter I think I've ever met. I think he produces over 1,000 articles a year. Dean Takahashi, are you exploring VR collaboration?
How are you doing, Dean? Thanks for joining us. So we do have some VR collaborations, VR and AR collaborations. I think they use graphics cards and graphics horsepower well, and so yes, we do have some collaborations with a few lead customers.
I'm going to channel Dean for a second and said, do you want to be more specific?
Well,
he's interviewed me so many times, I know he will always do the follow-up.
I think if you're asking specifically, are we doing more VR collaborations as a result of COVID-19? I would say not particularly. If you're asking again, do we have overall VR collaborations? Are we doing specialty hardware and software? We are doing some specialty hardware and software.
Thank you. Back to one of the leadership questions, which I think as a CEO is something we all wonder about. How does one develop and exercise good judgment when the future is unknown and not all the facts are in?
Yeah, great question. Great question. I would say that, if I think about the past few months and, what's on the minds of some of my peers and what we think about, it's, the world is changing very quickly, and the best that we can do is number one, make sure that we have very good signals, And when I say very good signals, I mean, signals about the business, signals about, frankly, the medical and health situation, locally, as well as, signals about, sort of our employees and our customers. And we've increased that rhythm and that, sort of evaluation of these signals, to an extent that like every week we're paying a lot of attention to the data. And I think that's the best that we can do because it is an environment that's changing so quickly, and we make adjustments as necessary. So, on the local health situation, I mean, you can see it with across the regions. On the business situation, we track, sales at all of our large partners across the world, so we can see what's happening in China versus what's happening in Korea versus what's happening in Italy versus what's happening in the US. And that gives you a set of information. So, you're not going to be able to predict the next 5 years. It's kind of hard to predict the next 5 years. But, we kind of set sort of very ambitious goals, but make sure that we're optimizing, based on, what we're seeing in the market on a very active basis.
Another audience member says, how do you expect to see gaming continue to grow and shift in the coming years?
Yeah, so gaming's a pretty exciting area. There are, if you think about it, we've talked about maybe, billions of gamers, like it could be 2 billion gamers. If you think about the mobile phone form factor, PCs, game consoles, and now gaming in the cloud. I think gaming continues to grow. I think when you look at online gaming, it's another way for us to interact. Like I used to think it was, unusual that so many people enjoyed online gaming. Now it's like, boy, it's the, esports is like the next sports phenomena, right? And people are very, very avid in that. Our goal is to give as much realism into that gaming experience as possible. So, we build very, very complex graphics processors so that, you can look at the microscopic wind going through someone's hair. And it just makes it more real. It makes the whole experience, more entertaining, more, sort of photorealistic in that realm. And I think that gaming ecosystem is going to continue to get better. I mean, this year is going to be very exciting with some of the game consoles that will be launched by Microsoft and Sony. A lot of people, interact with gaming through game consoles. And so, we're going to continue to see growth in the gaming sector.
Ian King of Bloomberg asks, the issues that you talked about related to U.S. competitiveness and the role the semiconductor industry plays have been on the agenda of the SIA for many, many years. Has anything changed? Any reason for hope that those able to make changes are listening? Thanks.
Ian, it's true. I think there's no question that the semiconductor industry has been thinking about these issues for a long time. I do think there are some changes. I think the changes are around, one, both the recognition of the importance of the semiconductor industry. I just think that it's become more clear to all of us that, leadership in semiconductors are important. And I do also, think that there is sort of a new view of supply chains that people are understanding. So I agree. It's been on the docket for quite some time, but I do think that there are some shifts in thinking.
I know we're shifting gears, but I know you're very flexible mentally, so this shouldn't be a challenge. But what is AMD's take on the 5 nanometer chipset, and how much advantage does it have to AMD compared to 7? And when will the 5 be out?
Well, that does sound like we're shifting gears, Gary. There's someone who's an avid watcher of technology. Look, 5 nanometer is going to be important. Today, we're on 7 nanometer. 7 nanometer is leadership in the industry. We will be going to 5 nanometer in the next couple of years. I'm not ready to talk about details yet, other than to say that, as far as we can see, it's progressing well. And it will go a long way to continuing, sort of our momentum around, sort of pushing the envelope on technology. And that's, Gary, if I try to take a step back, that's really what we're trying to do, right? We actually believe that technology is empowering. It's empowering to companies, it's empowering to people, it's empowering to industries. And so, our goal is to provide those, foundational building blocks. And so 5 nanometer is one of those, important elements in pushing the envelope on technology.
It's a great way, but there's a personal question to end this. This will be the final question I ask you. And it's one I often wonder about when I see strong leaders is, do you find yourself falling into leadership roles and things you do outside of work, hobbies and such? Do you automatically take over in a room when you're in a meeting, in a volunteer thing? When you go to one of these association leadership things where it's a bunch of other leaders, are you a listener, or are you a talker, or you give equal time to everyone?
It's funny, when you ask personal questions, it takes me longer to answer than when you ask business questions. I am perhaps less of a talker than you might imagine. I sort of have this philosophy of you should say something when you have something very profound to say, and not just talk to fill a room. I do find, though, that as we've sort of advanced, as AMD has done better, that we have more of a responsibility in the industry. And so I think the talking, as you say it, or the volunteering, as you say it, is part of our responsibility as an important member of the industry and of the community. So, but talking extemporaneously is not my thing. So I appreciate your questions because they keep me talking. But in general, I would say I'm more of a listener.
Well, you've only given me one answer, which I disagree with, and that was your final statement that talking extemporaneously is not your thing. Thank you so much for sharing thoughts on a very, very wide range of issues today. You've been very generous with your time and your insights, and it's not just about the technical aspects, which we barely touched upon, but it's your leadership, it's what your company's done, it's some of the societal issues we're all facing now. So thank you, Lisa. It's been really terrific. And I know I'm speaking on behalf of everyone listening when we appreciate you giving us an hour of your time.
Gary, thank you very much. Really appreciate you having us, and look forward to talking again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Gary, for that fascinating discussion. The upcoming events in the series are Kay Coles James on June 11th, Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy on June 23rd, and the U.S. House Whip James Clyburn on June 30th. Registration is open on the Nvtc website, nvtc.org. We hope to see you there. In the meantime, please stay safe and healthy and have a great rest of your day.